Become the best version of yourself. The fourth step is knocking down your barriers. There are plenty of reasons why a person would not want to be themselves fully. According to the physician and psychiatrist Dr. John Pierakis, there are main experiences that create barriers to be our true selves. These barriers are 5 wounds, were popularized by the famous French author, Lise Bourbeau. Those wounds are abandonment, rejection, injustice, humiliation, and betrayal. Let's start with a quick assessment that will help you determine which wounds are the most significant barriers to your growth and expression of your true self. Answer honestly yes or no in your mind. Do you feel like a victim regularly? A. As a child, did you ever feel that you were not wanted? R. Do you lack self-confidence? A. R. H. I. Do you regularly seek solitude? R. Do you do the tasks slowly? H. Do you find it difficult to ask for help? I. Do you think you're stable and very responsible? R. Do you want to be important in life? B. Do you regularly doubt your choices? I. Do you stress or get nervous before you speak? R. I. Do you feel anxious before you go on a trip, facing a change in your life? O. Do you use drugs or alcohol all the time? R. A. H. Do you like acting? B. Do you always need a presence around you? O. Do you feel the need to help others all the time? A. H. B. Are you regularly convinced you are right? Do you try to convince others? B. Are you demanding on yourself? B. I. Do you like everything to be in order around you? B. I. Do you generally distrust others? R. B. I. Do you take care of other people's problems before you take care of your own? Do you take care of others more easily than yourself? H. Do you often blame yourself? Do you regularly feel guilty? R. A. H. I. Do you regularly have breathing problems? R. A. H. Do you often have low blood sugar? Do you have diabetes? R. A. H. Do you often have body tensions? B. I. Are you hypersensitive to being dirty, take a few showers a day, hate having hands dirty, etc.? H. Do you easily give up a project, a goal along the way? R. A. Are you impatient, refusing the slowness of others? B. I. Are you bulimic? Or do you struggle with an eating disorder? H. Scoring, calculate all the yes for each letter. R. Rejection. I. Injustice. H. Humiliation. A. Abandonment. B. Betrayal. And then divide each by 10. Now that you can see which wound has the most yes out of 10, let's explore each one of those obstacles in your life and help you understand those deep wounds. Even if you didn't score high on some wounds, read the content because you might still relate with some of the information provided below. Rejection. Rejection is a profound wound because the one who suffers from it feels rejected in his being and especially in his right to exist. Therefore, it is practically impossible to be yourself when you wear that wound. It is not unusual for people who feel rejected to have a fleeing physique, that is to say, a body or a part of the body that seems to want to disappear or become very small. As if the receding person wanted to go unnoticed for fear of being rejected. In terms of behavior, they often doubt their right to exist. They seek solitude because if they receive a lot of attention, they would be afraid of not knowing what to do. They can be fleeing, which is why they prefer not to get attached to material things because they would prevent them from running away. They often wonder what they are doing on this planet and finds it hard to believe that they could be happy here and bring something to this world. They don't know what to do with themselves when they get too much attention. In relationships with others, they are constantly finding ways to seek love from the parent of the same sex and will reject themselves from a person of the other sex, often feeling guilty when they face rejection. It is not unusual for them to live in ambivalence. When they are accepted, they won't believe it and often create a self-sabotaging situation so that others reject them. Their biggest fear is panic and anxiety because that often arises in them when they are rejected. Injustice. The wound related to injustice is intimately linked to the wound of rejection. While rejection touches deeply the being, the wound of injustice touches on having and doing. People who have that wound often has a body rigid, and as perfect as possible. They have a well-proportioned body, rigid movements, stiff neck, and very proud. They are usually lively persons with dynamic movements, but who is rigid and lacks flexibility. Often a perfectionist and envious. These persons tend to cut themselves off from their feelings and often cross their arms. They try to be perfect and justifies themselves a lot. They find it difficult to admit that they have problems. They often doubt their choices. They like order and tend to control themselves by demanding a lot from each other. They can be angry and cold and has difficulty showing affection. They don't want to be late but will often be delayed because they take a long time to prepare. It is often difficult for people with the injustice wound to accept compliments, help, or gifts from others because they feel in debt toward the person after. Their biggest fear is when others are cold toward them because that awakens the unfairness but is also a reflection of their shadow. Humiliation. This wound is mostly related to the physical aspect of having and doing. Most individuals with the humiliation wound have a larger and round body, round face, with a broad and rounded neck. They are often ashamed of themselves and others or afraid to shame others. They think they are dirty or unclean. They don't want to recognize and assume their sensuality and their love of the pleasures associated with the senses. That is why they often compensate and reward themselves with food. And they gain weight quickly to give themselves a reason not to enjoy their senses. They are also afraid of being punished if they enjoy life too much. So, they ignore their freedom by putting the needs of others before their own, so that they stop enjoying life. Most individuals with the humiliation wound want to do everything for others. In reality, they want to create constraints and obligations for themselves to stop enjoying their freedom and life. This lack of enjoyment reinforces the feeling of being abused and humiliated. And in the same way, they tend to demean and humiliate others by making them feel that they cannot do it alone without them. They are often inclined to blame themselves for everything and even take the blame for others. Their biggest fear is their freedom. They are afraid to lose the ability to be themselves when humiliated by others. Abandonment. The wound experienced in the case of abandonment is the second deepest after that of rejection because they both affect the being at a profound level. Most people with the abandonment wound lack tonus. Their body is usually long and slender with a back that becomes rounded and sagging. As if the spine and muscles were not able to keep the body upright. Their body seems to need help to hold on. Those who suffer from abandonment do not feel emotionally nourished enough. They need constant help and support. They think that they cannot do anything on their own and regularly need someone to support them. They often have ups and downs. For a while, they are happy, and everything is fine, and suddenly, they feel unhappy and sad. They tend to dramatize a lot. The smallest little incident takes on gigantic proportions. In a group, they like to talk about themselves and often brings everything back to them. Besides, they usually seek the opinion or approval of others before making decisions. They can't make up their mind, or they doubt their choice when they don't feel supported by someone else. And when they do something for someone, they do it with the expectation of a return of affection. Their problems give them the gift of attention, and this prevents them from being abandoned. The more a person acts like a victim, the more his or her abandonment wound increases. Their greatest fear is loneliness since it is directly connected to that feeling of being abandoned. Betrayal, or treason. The wound of betrayal is intimately related to the wound of abandonment. While abandonment is about being, the wound of betrayal is about having and doing. Their body often exhibits strength and power. In men, shoulders wider than the lower body. In women, lower body larger than the shoulders, pear-shaped body. The higher the asymmetry between the upper and lower body, the greater the betrayal wound. Very uncompromising, they want to show others what they are capable of. They often interrupt and respond before a person is finished. When things don't go fast enough to their liking, they become angry. They consider themselves hardworking and responsible. They struggle with laziness. They hate not being trusted and do not always keep their commitments and promises or forces themselves to keep them. They tend to be impatient and intolerant. They confide with difficulty and do not show their vulnerability. People with a betrayal wound have great difficulty accepting the cowardice of others. They also have trouble delegating tasks while trusting others. Among the 5 wounds, the betrayal wounded is the one who has the most expectations towards others because he likes to foresee and control everything. Unlike abandonment wounded who has expectations of others because they want to be loved and supported in their abandonment injury, the expectations of the betrayal wounded are to check that others do what they need to do well to verify if they can trust them. They firmly state what they believe and expect others to agree with their beliefs. They tend to state their point of view categorically and seeks to convince others at all costs. They think that when someone understands them, they agree with them, which unfortunately is not always the case. Their biggest fears are disengagement, separation, dissociation, and denial, which are often experienced in a situation of betrayal. It is essential to know what your wounds are to identify your limits and what obstacles stop you from being your true self. By being aware of your behaviors and wounds, you are getting to know yourself better and also understanding why you tend to behave in specific ways. Maybe one of your wounds is betrayal, and you get very insecure in your relationship when your partner doesn't live up to your expectations. By knowing that about yourself, you can learn to improve the relationship and how you react to certain situations. The first step to heal your wounds is to observe yourself when you feel hurt. Chapter 10 will help you with that. Then you can move on to accept that you aren't perfect, and it's okay to recognize the hurt. Last is to admit your fear and allow yourself to move through that fear by being vulnerable and honest with yourself and others. Henry Ford once said, "Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right." The fifth step is to create boundaries. Boundaries are one of the most underused ways to be the best version of yourself. You must learn to say no. Saying no is probably one of the hardest things you'll ever have to do to ensure you are in integrity with yourself. Most people are not used to hear no or respect no. To learn to say no, you have to explore how you react to people who say no to you. Once you are open to others saying no to you, start practicing it yourself. Say no when you don't feel like doing something or when it doesn't feel right for you. Another aspect of creating boundaries is how you behave in your friendship circle. Be clear about individuals who are supportive and uplift you, and stay away from those who only bring you down or feed drama. Surround yourself with people who appreciate you for who you truly are. Now is the perfect time to assess your friendships and set boundaries around those who do not fulfill you. Toxic relationships often feel a more deep-seated need to please others. If you are experiencing a relationship with a person who is mean to you or always makes you feel bad about yourself, knows that you are allowing this. It is okay for you to say no to that type of relationship. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship, it could be with a friend or a coworker. To have healthy boundaries, you need to know what you value. If you value compassion, but you turn around and start criticizing and gossiping with a friend, you are not in integrity with yourself. Be clear about what you value and then match the behaviors to those values. That way, it will be easier to create boundaries and shift your behavior when it is not aligned with your values and beliefs. Once you are clear with your values, seek them in others, and surround yourself with people who have similar values to you. Once you can recognize how you feel about the relationship you currently have and are clear about your values, it will be much easier to assert yourself. For example, if you are with a group of friends and one suggests something you are uncomfortable about, you can assert yourself. Express how you feel and why you don't feel like participating in that idea. The more you will assert yourself, the better you will feel about yourself. Just be mindful that you are not judging or criticizing others when you assert yourself. Position your thoughts in a way that it's about what you feel, and what you don't feel is aligned with your true self. But most of all, stop trying to please others, because it is one of the most limiting behaviors you can have. When you please others, you completely forget your true self and allow others to dictate how you should behave, look, and even talk. This type of behavior is very destructive to the self, and it is pretty much acting yourself. You become an actor and live the life that others want you to live in. Once you learn to let go of pleasing others, you start living your own life. You no longer tailor your experience to the image of others, but more to what you want and who you are. By doing so, the people around you will accept you for who you are, and if they don't accept you, they are not meant to be in your life. Creating boundaries means recognizing that sometimes you do things to please others, and that has to stop if it makes you feel bad about yourself. Pay attention to when you say yes, and deep down, you don't feel like doing something. Take the courage to stop trying to please others. For example, if somebody asks you to do something for them and you don't feel it's aligned with your needs, just say that it's not a good time for you. You can also say no. Doing what you want doesn't mean free for all, it means showing compassion toward what lies in your heart and do things that bring you joy, fulfillment, and drive. The more you will do things that bring you joy, the less you will need boundaries. You will surround yourself with people who appreciate you for who you are. You won't need to say no because it will be aligned with your true self. Once you start setting boundaries, you will notice your life changing, and you will find yourself experiencing more positive moments. A life with boundaries is the perfect environment to be yourself and live your best life. If you want to be the best version of yourself, you need to learn to say no and create boundaries. By distancing yourself from things that don't align with your authentic self, you are saying no to distraction and hindrance to living your best life. When you start respecting yourself, you put yourself as the priority. Many people believe it is selfish, meanwhile, when it is done for the right reasons, it serves a bigger purpose. It allows you to have the time, energy, and wellness to be your best self around others. It will enable you to be present for others and, in return, uplift them too. When you find the courage to create healthy boundaries in your life, you quickly are rewarded with joy, happiness, and a sense of being the best version of yourself. Christine Morgan said, "Setting boundaries is a way of caring for myself. It doesn't make me mean, selfish, or uncaring just because I don't do things your way. I care about me too.